Kenneth Young Cromar, 29th of June 1932 through the 25th of July 2021, Part 1. In 1932, the Great Depression had unemployment reaching 24% by mid-year, then climbing to 32%. It was at this time that Kenneth Young Cromar, who most knew as K. Cromar, was born on June 29, 1932, to Raymond Kenneth Cromar and Louine Clausen Young Cromar at Salt Lake City's LDS Hospital. His parents lived in a duplex in Salt Lake, close to 13th East and 21st South, a few blocks away from the old state territorial prison. His grandmother Young would tell him as they passed the old prison, "This was the home of Grandpa for a while," referring to when Brigham Young was there. His first siblings born were the twin brothers Don and Dale, born in May of 1934. As they grew a little older, Kay was able to teach them how to have fun. In 1936, Kay's one and only sister, Carly, was born. Louine was happy to have a little girl after those first three boys. In 1937, his family moved to the Milton Avenue home, where they started the film business, showing and shipping 16mm promotional films for Modern Talking Picture Service. In 1939, they moved to 1122 East 8 South, where they remained until their move to Denver in 1948. In 1940, Bruce was born. Kay was 8 and helped doing all the big brother things like changing and rinsing out diapers, helping the twins or Carly get breakfast, playing with family in the neighborhood, and feeding his new baby brother Bruce. Things changed on December 7, 1941, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Neighbors, young men and women, volunteered for military service to respond. 3 years later, his cousin, Dilworth Randolph Young, enlisted in the Army. He was 6 years older than Kay and was the only son of his uncle S. Dilworth Young. He was killed in action in October of 1944. That loss broke his Uncle Dill and Aunt Gladys's heart. Seeing a photograph of Randolph, we realized that Kay looked quite a bit like he did as a young man. Dill saw many of Randolph's likenesses and attributes in Kay. He was always very kind to him. At the age of 10, Kay started his career in sales. He sold light bulbs door to door. He carried a box of light bulbs, rang the doorbell, and asked if the residents were bulb snatchers, explaining, "That's a person who takes a good bulb from a working lamp and puts it into another lamp where the bulb had burned out." He was very successful. In May of 1944, his fourth brother, Glenn, was born. In 1948, Ken and Louine Cromar moved their family to Denver. There, his family lived in two homes over a short period of time. One was on Ohio Way, and the other was on South York Street. Kay had hoped to attend Salt Lake's East High. Instead, he attended Denver's South High School. Kay was athletic and tried his hand at several sports, including football, track events where he ran low hurdles and relays. He also took up pole vaulting. He kept his steel pole for many years. At one point, it actually served as an upright pole mounted to the side of their home, to which he attached a TV antenna. The York Street home was about a half-mile away from Washington Park, where they had Smith Lake with a swimming beach. It was there that his dad reconnected with John H. Vandenberg, who he first met while serving a mission in Holland. Later, John became a silent partner in Ken and Louine's film business. During his teen years, Kay went with a group of Boy Scouts to float through Glen Canyon. They drove from Denver to Height, Utah, and rode the river from there to Lee's Ferry, Arizona, through what was then Glen Canyon. He got to see the canyon prior to the closing of it before flooding for what would become Lake Powell. Kay worked at the Rocky Mountain News as a copy boy. He would rush stories from one place to another and eventually to the linotype man who committed the story to the metal and got it placed into the presses. Kay remembers being part of a youth chorus in Denver where he thought he'd first met Ann West. Ann remembered that she first met Kay at one of the combined ward dances. When her family first moved to Denver, they were part of the first ward before they split it into the first and Crestmore wards. Ann had known his younger brothers, Don and Dale, and they were close to her age. She felt comfortable going to the combined ward dances because she knew Don and Dale would be there, and she wouldn't be a stranger. They had an older brother. In 1951, Kay graduated from South High. He attended BYU that fall, as did Ann. Ann and Kay dated at BYU and were married in 1951 in Bannock, Idaho. They were sealed at the Salt Lake City Temple in 1952. Kay's youngest brother Ross was born while Kay and Ann were attending BYU. In 1952, their first child and daughter, Janet Ann Cromar, was born to these poor BYU college students at the Utah Valley Hospital. In those first years of marriage, they had no transportation, so Kay and Ann saved in order to purchase two 3-speed British-built Raleigh bicycles. Ann's was navy blue, Kay's was red. Both had tire pumps that locked onto the center bar mounts and had headlights with a generator mounted by the wheels. Kay designed and made from practically nothing but scraps a baby seat mounted over his rear tire so Janet could be a passenger. When Chris was born, he rode in Ann's front bicycle basket. In Kay's chemistry class, he created a shampoo for Janet that didn't sting her eyes, a tearless shampoo. This was even before Johnson's & Johnson sold one. Kay joined the Air Force ROTC on campus, receiving a small scholarship. But in 1953, the Korean War armistice was proposed and a ceasefire declared. The military was suddenly engaged in a major rift. The number of ROTC candidates and available scholarships was significantly reduced. He had hoped to fly jets and become an airline captain. BYU student by day, by night, Kay was a steel worker at Columbia Steel's Ironton plant just north of Springville. One job was to clear the crucible spout of slag so it could pour cleanly. He scraped hot floating slag from the surface of molten steel, pulling it away from the spout. Another job was knocking red-hot ingots out of revolving molds. The molds were linked on a big chain drive overhead, and at the end of the belt, they turned upside down to drop the ingots onto a pile to cool and get stacked. Sometimes the ingots didn't release, so Kay would take a long iron bar and smack the mold hard enough to get it to fall out. Periodically, an ingot fell down, landing on his boot's toes, smoldering the shoe leather. Kay worked at a small ice cream plant. He would combine all of the leftover remnants, too small to fill a carton, into one round carton. The 5-gallon container wouldn't fit in their small freezer, so Ann spooned every scoop of it out onto wax paper, which she carefully folded and squeezed into the small freezer box. They always had a freezer full of mixed flavored ice cream, which they served to guests, not in bowls, but on a plate. Kay made deliveries for Utah Valley Furniture and would hang their custom draperies in clients' homes. His brush with fame was hanging curtains ordered by Elder Harold B. Lee. In April of 1954, Kay and Ann had a son, Chris West Cromar. Kay sold pots and pans and did very well. His co-worker Lauren Saunders later purchased a franchise for selling stainless steel cookware and decided to move to Colorado. Lauren asked Kay and Ann to come to Denver to sell to that bigger market. Selling cookware in Provo, his income increased substantially. They hoped to get a car. Too young to get approved to buy a used car, he was approved to buy a brand new car. They bought a 1955 Chevy four-door Bel Air factory-painted Neptune Poly Green. They also purchased new furniture on a payment plan and new dishes. In 1956, Kay and Ann were preparing to make the move to Denver. They had packed up their things in a trailer, and Ann, expecting her daughter Carol, stayed behind while Kay and Dawn drove their things to Denver. The car struck a deer in Wyoming, and the trailer overturned. All of their new furniture and dishes were destroyed. Baby number 3, Carol. Carol Ann Cromar was born in February of 1956, and once arriving, Kay and Ann finalized their move to Denver. Lauren Saunders and Cleo, his wife, lived across the street from Kay and Ann's new apartment. Lauren and Kay were doing well enough that they became co-owners of a Stinson Voyager four-seater airplane. Kay's great dream was to become an airline pilot, and owning your own plane was a fast way to get the hours of flight time that he needed. In 1957, Kay's life took a different turn when his father, Ken, asked him to leave his successful pots and pan sales and come help him build the family business. He went there very reluctantly, putting aside his dreams of becoming an airline pilot, he and Lauren eventually selling their ownership in the Stinson airplane. Kay jumped in, giving it his best efforts. He did a little bit of everything, but his main focus was on sales through the state of Colorado. Kay loved owning sporty, fast, hot cars, so he bought a 1957 baby blue Thunderbird with a convertible hardtop, 2 bucket seats up front, and a tiny little space in back that Janet and Chris could sit or stand on. Carol rode on Mom's lap in the passenger seat when Dad was driving. His father insisted that he buy something more family-oriented, so he sold the 57 T-Bird and bought a 57 Ford station wagon. Kay and Ann had purchased a home in North Denver in the Western Hills subdivision. That home cost them about $8,900. His brother Don and wife Rosemary bought a home right behind theirs. Kay and Ann lived at 341 Cortez Street, and Don and Rosemary lived at 320 Cragmore Street. The Cromar family located their office at 28 East 9th Avenue. Bruce and Glenn could be found working there after school, inspecting, shipping, and receiving films. Kay was the traveling salesman, and Don had been trained by Bell and Howell to repair their projectors. Business increased, and they later moved to 922 Bannock Street, then to the corner of 12th and Stout Street in downtown Denver. A final move was made to the Montbello area to 4725 Oakland Street. Susan Ann Cromar arrives. In December of 1958, their third daughter Susan was born. She was always Kay's favorite. Kay's father talked him into trading his Ford station wagon in to buy a car which almost no one here has ever heard of. Ever. A German-built 1959 Borg Ward Isabella station wagon. The big German auto manufacturers, Mercedes and Volkswagen, were able to get the government to crush this little upstart company, and that was the end of future Borg Ward upgrades. In the summer of 1959, Kay and Ann moved from North Denver into Ann's parents' home on the corner of 17th Avenue Parkway and Albion Street. Ann's father was being transferred to the Chicago area for a while, so they sold their home to Kay and Ann. Kay worked hard to fix the place up, inside and out. Janet and Chris attended a private school, Albion Elementary, across from the Denver Children's Home. Carol and Susan spent their days with Ann. It was in April of 1962 that daughter number 4, Sharon Ann Cromar, was born. Kay was doing his best to take care of the children in between visits to the hospital to see Ann and their brand new strawberry blonde-haired baby. In 1962, those old enough attended Park Hill Elementary. 2 years earlier, Dawn and Rosemary had moved 6 blocks north of Kay and Ann, so all of their children went to the same schools. The teachers had their hands full of Cromars. At one time, their family had 2 great-grandparents, 4 grandparents, Dawn and Rosemary with their children, Dale and Evia with their then 3 children, Glenn, Bruce, and Ross, all living within 9 blocks of each other. Kay used his 1960 Pontiac Tempest for work and traveling. Ann's father, Owen, gave her a 1956 Oldsmobile Delta 88 to make it easier for her to get the children out of the house and go run errands. It was a tank. In the summer of 1965, Kay and Ann took their family on what was forever known as the trip. Destinations: Dinosaur National Park, Salt Lake City, Timpanogos, Lehigh, St. George, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, the beach, Buena Vista Studios, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, sailing, Grand Canyon, Mesa, Arizona, and back to Denver. In 1965, Elder Al Masani came to Denver to split and reorganize the Denver 3rd Ward and to create the new Denver 12th Ward. To his children's utter surprise, Kay was called to serve as the bishop of this newly organized ward. He served in that calling for several years. In the summer of 1970, Kay and Ann moved to 6325 East 17th Avenue Parkway. The family business suffered a terrible loss in the summer of 1977 when a flash flood hit downtown Denver. They had 3 feet of water in the basement and standing water everywhere upstairs. All of their employees, friends, and several church members immediately came to help clean up the mess. In 1980, they found a space in Denver's Montbello area with a reasonable rental cost. A few years later, Kay closed the door and changed careers to become an insurance agent. End of Part 1, The Life of Kenneth Y. Cromar. We love our dad. Thank you for being the good man that you were and are.